stories. I've had double-digit concussions myself, starting with 2 car accidents where I got into cars with boys, one who was on mushrooms and one that was drinking. And my concussions, I had some sports injuries, but weren't diagnosed as concussions. And then I had 2 car accidents, my senior year and freshman year in college, senior year of high school and freshman year in college. So those 2 car accidents where my head hit the dashboard put me in this cycle where you're more likely to get a concussion with less of a force. So it's been part of my adult life. I coach lacrosse, I have 3 boys, I have a really active lifestyle, and I'll bump my head, and it's anywhere from a 2 to 4 week recovery. I was coaching at Yale, at Eli tournament, a U15. I don't know if you were there that day.
Yeah, I was.
You can actually clarify my story. So I was turned pushing the kids out of the box, and the other coach was behind me, and a ball came and hit me in the eye. I had sunglasses on, I dropped to the ground, and both teams took a knee. And I could see at the corner of my eye, like everybody's on their knee waiting for me. It was like the most horrendous feeling, because I didn't want to throw up in front of everybody. I couldn't get up, right?
Oh yeah, you were actually down for maybe 5 minutes before you were able to get up.
It was a really long time, and nobody would move. And I kept going, play, play, and they were being very sweet. So they took me to the med tent. They told me that probably the trainers there, that it was a big tournament, so they had a pretty big medical staff. And they're like, do you have someone to drive you home? And I'm like, yes, I do. Completely lied to them. I wanted to get out of there. I was tired of being like, the concussion victim of the day, and they had no one else to take care of. So I got in my Suburban and I drove home from Yale, completely knowing everything I know. Being an adult, we're supposed to be responsible, but I wanted out of there. I didn't want to leave my car there, and I didn't want to ask for help. Not a particularly good story, but you have to watch out for your friends. You have to watch out for your teammates, because as our stories show, we don't make very good decisions, and that's the key thing. It's more important. You are the expert. You're at a party, everybody's drinking, somebody falls down the stairs and hits their head. You are the expert in that room. You may not be able to diagnose a concussion, but you're the one that can make sure your friend doesn't have 4 more beers and goes to sleep. You can be driving and somebody not wear their seatbelt, and you get some sort of instance where someone hits their head. It can be on a field. It can be anything. 20% of concussions in your age group happen in sports. Okay, so that means 80% of concussions are happening outside of sports. We're so focused on football. We're so focused on, cheerleading is the next thing. But those are 20 to 25% of the concussions that are happening. Concussions are really happening at the parties, people getting high, people getting drunk, driving because it's fun in, bizarre ways. I'm going to play with the skateboard in the basement while I'm bored. These are where the concussions where you don't see people going in for medical care. And they just did a study where half the respondents, adults, did not take themselves or their kids in for medical care because they didn't really think a concussion was serious enough. 7 out of 10 adults didn't know the symptoms of concussion. That sheet I gave you, those are all concussion symptoms, every single one of those. Some of you guys got that. The ones that got that were the ones that have had concussions. It can be a bizarre crying fit. Somebody's crying and crying and crying. It can be throwing up. You can have one of those symptoms. You can have 4 of those symptoms. You can have one of those symptoms the first minute. You can have a couple of them the next and the next day. In the concussion, I've worked in 2 concussion clinics now. On Monday morning around 11, the phone rings because all the kids that are hurt on Friday and Saturday night that sleep it off on Sunday because they're teenagers and their parents think they need to sleep and they're tired, go Monday morning and they go to classes, they take a test, they do something, they walk into the lunchroom and the lights and the noise, and they that's when you get to the school nurse and call the clinic. So you're the expert in that moment. So that's my idea of educating. I want to spend, what I'm trying to do is start a national program where we take high school students like these guys, like you guys, and we take high school students that have had concussions, athletes or not athletes, and go into middle schools. And what I really want to start doing is educating middle school kids. And it seems to me that most concussions happen right at that middle school to high school realm. And I want to have kids go through high school having this knowledge. and having it before they need it. Because you guys are educated once you have a concussion, but I like to put the information before that you have it. And the idea about concussions is it's changing every week. What a concussion is, how we treat it. We used to say it's purely function. It's how your brain works. You can't see it. Well, they're starting with new tests and new scans to be able to see some of these things in functional MRIs. They're too expensive now. You're not going to get this in an ER, but they're doing studies. I was looking at a soccer study where they took soccer players that had never had concussions. Okay, these are never had concussions, professional soccer players, and they put them up against swimmers. And they looked at their brain matter, and for some reason the soccer players have a white matter, which is the connection between all the gray matter, is distorted. And they don't know, is it distorted because of multiple hits? Is it distorted because they've been playing soccer so long it makes your brain funny? Like, you really don't know why these soccer players have this. And we're looking long term at CTE, which is a part of this with football players now, and some hockey players and boxers have. These boxers, they used to call it punch drunk, where you have early onset Alzheimer. I'm in that study so that when I die, my brain will go to Boston and they'll slice it up and they'll look at it and see, you can then stain it and see this tau protein. We really need more women to donate their brains. Only 5% of the people up there are women, and we know women's concussions are different than men's concussions. Do we know why?
Why is that?
Why? We don't know. We know girls concuss 4-to-1 to boys. So that's why you'll see football numbers and girls soccer numbers start to match up. For 1,000 plays, girls concuss like boys. Girls' concussions, we know, tend to be twice as long as a boy's concussion. Their symptoms tend to be multiple. They'll have a couple of more symptoms. They'll have 5 to 6 symptoms, where a boy might have 1 to 2 symptoms. One of the questions may be, is it neck strength? So you have a boy's neck, you have a boy's head and a girl's head, weigh about the same. We won't get into discussion of brains, but they weigh about the same. So if you have a boy's head with his muscles, he gets hit, maybe that. So you have the brain slosh, slosh, slosh. So maybe that's 3 sloshes. Girl has weaker neck, same brain, and the girls tend to whiplash. There's more sloshing back and forth. So maybe it's the brain goes back 8 times, where boys might be 2. They don't know why. Again, it was about 15 years before they knew the difference between men's heart attacks and women's heart attacks. Our medical needs are always a little further behind. I think with girls soccer coming up, my generation, we didn't play travel soccer in 3rd grade. It was a fall sport. You didn't play it in the spring. You're the first generation coming up where some of these sports have been played year-round. You guys are stronger, you're faster, you hit harder. They've now proven that 3rd grade football player boys can make as much of the G-forces to professional guys hitting each other. So we'll see, and it's going to be really interesting. By the time you guys graduate in college, we should know a whole bunch more. This field is really exploding.
And the technique is probably a lot worse when you're in 3rd grade than when you're in the NFL.
Well, it was interesting because when my son had 2 concussions, I had the choice as his coach which team to put him on to go back to lacrosse. And I thought, I'll put him on the B team because the A team is much more aggressive, And he was with beginning lacrosse players, and somebody spearheaded him within the first 20 minutes of practice in a $350 Rydell concussion-proof helmet, which isn't sold anymore. And as a mom, that was my I'll put him with beginners, which they didn't have proper technique. The same kid 2 weeks later spearheaded someone else and got himself a concussion. So that's why technique is really important. The NFL invited me up to Boston yesterday and heard Roger Goodell at the Boston at the Harvard School of Public Health, and he was talking about the different things the NFL is doing. They may come out with different helmets for different positions. There'll be an offensive helmet, a defensive helmet, and as the defense is broken down into different sections, different players on the defense may have different kind of helmet. Right now, helmets do not do anything to stop concussions. They're great for skull fractures, they're great for contusions. There isn't a helmet to keep the brain sloshed back and forth. Another thing they're doing is they are now allowing medical staff to have cell phones, iPads, and computers on the field so that they can coordinate information. They're also having athletic trainers in the press box, watching particular players, watching plays, running through the tapes, so that if somebody misses a hit from the sideline, someone in the press box may have it.
Is that like what Vigil Detect's doing right now, where the guy has the pager and every time somebody gets hit with it?
Yeah, there's all these different pagers, and I've seen so many new products come out. The head is meant to be hit back and forth. We're kind of designed to take, large bear runs at us, hits us, that kind of back and forth. Concussions get very complicated when you have those rotational hits, when the brain spins inside the head. So a lot of these sensors are very good taking G-force, but what they don't take is rotational force.
Okay.
I looked at a mouth guard, a prototype that had almost like a gyroscope compassy thing inside of it, and it's supposed to, as the player falls, record that kind of stuff. Again, this is all recording. It's like, well, again, with the impact test, I mean, this is all great so you can see the damage afterwards, but there's nothing before. There's no drug you can take. There's no equipment.
There's
These
no
girls that go
prevention.
out with those soccer bands on their heads and think that they're protected. The preventative is a word. If you use that with your product now, you're going to be sued. That is a bad word. You don't, because there's no way to prevent a concussion. So we have very little out front, and we have all these great techniques to look at the road carnage afterwards. So all of these things aren't going to protect players. Maybe if we learn, U.S. football has gone through a heads-up campaign where they're teaching players to play in a different way, where they practice differently, they cut down full contact practices, they have practices without pads, there are all these different kinds of things. But again, we look at concussions, only 20% is in sports. We get so focused sometimes on sports being, well, we'll all be better if we don't play sports and we sit home and play Xbox. That is not the answer, because more than concussions, childhood obesity and lack of exercise is a bigger problem. So we want more people to play sports. How can we get safer equipment? How can we, referees are hugely important. Referees determine how rules are played. I mean, I've even played sports. You kind of watch to see if the ref's going to call stuff, right? Right? Yeah. So it's referees, it's equipment, it's rules, it's education. So that's basically all we have. There's no drug for concussions. Do you guys have questions that you want to ask me or the kids on the panel? Yeah?
Where you said that there's no helmet to prevent a concussion, I can see that, but with some of the designs to distribute the energy going around your head, where if you get a front impact with the face mask, there's one helmet that has kind of like gives way and kind of just distributes the energy more.
The Zenith helmet?
No. No, the Shut Ion 4D, where it has the kind of like the shock absorbers on the side. Where if you get
they work.
and it goes that way, does that help with kind of the distribution of the energy going around?
It does when you put what they do is they take a styrofoam dummy head and they put it in a